Hello everybody and welcome back to another blind commentary of Overlord Season 3, Episode 3. As per usual, the outro time is there if you really care about that. We are now getting deeper into the Goblin side story, which is actually kind of interesting because I really like that we are exploring other races. So, previously in the previous season it was the lizard folk and humanity just in general, but this time around it's focused more on the goblins and the village of Karn, and that's certainly something that I quite like because we get to explore different aspects of the world, and it gives a lot of different perspectives, and those are certainly something that are very unusual, and they give a lot better contrast to the general feeling that Ainz and the rest of the Fall Guardians themselves and Pleiades actually provide. So it's a good difference in kind. So, without further ado, let us continue with the show proper. Hmm. I wonder how big of a role. Also, that is one cool looking sword. Jesus. I wonder how big of how big of a role Lupus will actually play in this, because I certainly like her quite a bit, and her personality is rather interesting. So I would like for her to play quite an important role because she certainly provides. Once again, she is rather unique, and I like seeing side characters, so, world building, character building, differences in kind, and the same thing that I've always been repeating about the good aspects of the show, that it's very varied. So, yeah. 子供ゴブリンは何者っすか？どうも冒険者としての視点から敵と思っちゃうのはいけないよな。冒険 That's actually a pretty cool difference. That adventurers don't really. That's also a very minor point, but an important point nonetheless. That actually is also kind of reflected in my current campaign, where there are a lot of Urk factions, and not all of them are. Actually, majority of them are not immediately hostile to humanity. So it's actually pretty cool to see this kind of. That's an important note to say that mostly adventurers view goblins as enemy, which it's a small thing, and it's to be expected, and it is very normal, but it is still an important thing to establish, even though that was to be expected. But it's a thing. 元だよ。カルネ村は私たちの村です。私たちでできる限りのことをするべきです。 Well, at the very least, she is very understanding, by the way. Also, I was informed that I'm blanking on her name, but this chick here who was just talking, she has gained, due to her training some of the goblins, she has gained rank in sergeant, which allowed her to yell that command in the previous episode. I didn't comment on that because I was actually rather confused about that, but that actually is a pretty cool explanation for a command ability, because I actually, in D&D 4th edition, I liked playing a commander who basically all of your actions were just giving other people actions, and that was really quite fun. But yeah, it's pretty cool nonetheless. But it's actually pretty cool that she's actually she wants them to actually. Why am I saying so many times? Actually, she wants them to first try doing all that they can, so before they actually go. Yeah, before they go bothering Lord Ainz, which makes sense that they wouldn't want to disturb their huge benefactor, that much. So, yeah. そうなんですか。よかった。その際に彼らを追っていた5匹のオーガを捕獲しました。 Wait, that's a very good interruption noise. Um, Goblins were able to capture ogres. Now, if I'm not completely mistaken, ogres are rather powerful even in this world, so that is quite the accomplishment, I must say. So that is very formidable, to say the least. That's actually very surprising. Ogre? はい。あいつら。ために働きなさい。 Eri is actually working like a leader. That's pretty goddamn cool. If I'm being frankly honest, that is actually kind of to be expected, considering that she's kind of taking the role of a commander. So it does make quite a bit of. it makes a lot of sense, and it's also pretty an interesting character trait for her to actually be able to take control of the situation and command respect like this, even though she's still just a meekly woman. Well, and I mean that she's weak, not that women are weak. You get what I mean. Sexist gun move strikes again. I mean, that she's weak. At the very least, she appears to be physically weak. So, but she does command quite a bit of a presence, which is rather interesting. Actually, now that I think about it, she isn't all that weak. So yeah, that's actually kind of cool. She's probably kind of a bit physically stronger than majority of the males in the village. I presume. I'm getting sidetracked here, but let's continue.
カルネ村の族長餌の獣を飼ってくれるそうだから僕たちを襲うことはまずないと思うな
Plus, thinking about defending the village, ogres will be a huge asset. So, considering that if you actually manage to get ogres on your army, that's a really huge. Well, you have Ainz on your side, but that's still a pretty huge asset, all things considered. So, it's generally speaking, pretty good news to get ogres command. I'm rather impressed by that. And also, if you actually want to work them, and if you get them to work, they will probably be able to haul quite a bit big of a load, especially compared to just mere goblins, you know.
それに今は少しでも戦力が欲しいってこともない仕事をいくつもやらなくちゃいけないなんて
Oh, what a peculiar situation. What a haunting situation. You have to pretend to be above others. Oh, that is so horrible. You have to actually act like a leader. Well, okay, that's actually quite a demanding position to be. So I shouldn't be just so bashful of her. It is actually quite a bit of responsibility considering that she actually has to command a small but growing army on her side. So, you know.
というのであれば納得がいく。しかし、この娘は単なる村娘だという。おかしいだろう。何かよからぬ企みをしておるに違いない。
It's actually pretty hilarious that Ainz just was like, this will probably help. Just take it. It's just a random magical item. Not like I have any use for just a troop of goblins. I can just snap my fingers and they all explode. But it's actually pretty impressive that it's so valuable that even the mage at the gate is just completely blown away by its magical power. It's hilarious.
私は単なる村娘で
彼女を行かせてやれ。
どういうことですか？
漆黒のモモン、アダマンタイト級冒険者が身元を保証するという話だ。
わかりました。
So, Ainz is still adventuring as Momon. That is actually kind of hilarious. But it makes sense that he wouldn't abandon that role even. He wouldn't abandon that role and would still use it to gather information. So it makes quite a bit of sense. And it's all fine and good that he's still using that. And especially that he's actually saving Henry from this trouble. Although now I do wonder exactly how will he explain the situation to Henry.
カルネ村のエモット、エランテルに入ることを許可する。
もう少し詳しくお願いしてもよろしいですかもしよろしければ応接室の方でいかがでしょうか
Well, that her mind changed rather quickly. I was beginning to wonder whether this request would go through or not. It's going to be interesting to see how many adventurers or who adventurers will even be willing to help her in this situation. And why exactly did the reception lady change her mind? But there are quite a few possibilities, and most likely it's because of Momon, so, you know, or Ainz, whatever you want to call him.
お願い話を聞かせてほしいの聞かせてくれないと私がまずいことになるの
安心してください。姉さんはこの極音が守りますぜ。
何アピールし
Once again, it's rather interesting to see that there is quite a bit of prejudice against goblins, although considering that they are usually a feral race, it once again it makes sense. So I'm not that surprised by it, but it's actually better to just reinforce the fact that goblins are hunted down on sight. So yeah, it makes sense. But I personally am more interested when there are like both good and bad, like goblins, and just in general other races that like monster races that are usually considered evil that are also sometimes good. That makes for quite a bit more, shall we say, flavor. Let's continue. It's actually rather interesting that a lot of, like, majority of them got different weapons. Like, all of them got personal weapons, which makes for quite a bit of flavor about their characters as well, because that would mean that their personalities are different and their weapon preferences are also different. So it would make sense that they use different weapons, and it would also mean that Henry has been paying attention to her soldiers. So it's pretty interesting.
いい剣です。重さもちょうどいい。
はい。
どうしたんですかい？
すみません。少し考えたいので一人にしてもらえますか。
I bet she was asked to lead the goblins to and the adventurers in the fight against those attackers or the against I bet that she was asked to lead the army. Basically, that's most likely what happened, and that would make sense considering that she is a commander. So.
娘が村長ですよ。絶対失敗するし、うまくいくわけないじゃないですか。
Well, I was not actually expecting that, so I presume that's actually rather surprising that Henry was asked to become the village chief. That's really, how would I say? Well, unexpected is the best word for it. There's just no other way to say it. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
もう私が出かけている間に寄り合いがあって。失敗はするわ。完璧に全てを行うなんて。
Oh gee, I wonder who she is talking about. Yeah.
いる限りでは41人ぐらいしかいないわ。だから失敗がどうこうか。ゴーン様がストーンゴーレムを貸してくれたんだ。ゴーン様。
Wait, how did of course, I'm just what am I thinking about? Like I was like confused. Like wait a minute, Ainz was just in town, so how did he? Oh wait, just teleport. Yeah, or fly. Either of those fixes that issue. But that's actually pretty goddamn cool. And actually, that's kind of hilarious for those ogres. Just like, yeah, sure, just live in that shit. You belong there. And actually, it's pretty cool that they used stone glums to build the shed as well. It's all quite neat.
さっきの話だけど。そっか。そうさ。
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that Henry makes for a very proficient leader at the very least. Like in the same, actually, she makes a very good like not a contrast, but a very good I'm looking for the word, but I'm missing it. She makes for a very good parallel to actually Ainz, who is also recognizes and remembers all of the members of his of the Nazaric and remembers all of their names, and in the same manner that Henry actually remembers all of the goblins' names. It's actually a pretty goddamn cool parallel between our two main leaders. Why did I do air quotes? They are just flat out leaders. It's a really cool parallel, and it's really interesting how this all panned out. It's actually pretty goddamn awesome.
僕は個人的にはエンリはいい村長になると思うよ。あの村人たちはどんな顔をするんだろう。虫け。
That's really ominous. That is very ominous. But I would believe that the village of Karn is under protection of Ainz, so it's unlikely that anything bad will happen to it. But that is really ominous nonetheless, and I have a really bad feeling about that.
のように暴力で潰されていく姿を想像すると。
So, what do I have to say? It's a really cool episode. That is for damn sure. It's a really interesting because it at the very least creates a very good and reinforces a very good parallel between Henry and Ainz, and that is actually really interesting that both of them are caring, important leaders, and this makes the first episode of this season actually have so much more significance, and that is all very good, well and good, and it's very interesting to have that as well, because even though the first episode was fine enough as it was, it was very good for reinforcing this parallel between the two leaders that we have in the show, and that is very, very good. Definitely very good. And it also makes me wonder what exactly the show has in store for us in the future, because that at the very least creates quite a lot of possibilities, and especially the ill wishes that Regina had in the end of wanting to see the village burn in flames, because that seemed very ominous to say the least, and possibly malevolent in the worst sense of the word. And that is certainly something that I personally do not wish, because it would be really horrible to see the village burn. I also do believe that the village is under protection of Ainz. So it's unlikely, but not entirely impossible, that something will happen to the village. But it would be a shame, because Henry has grown into a very good leader at the very least. Like in the one of the good examples is that she does remember and care about each of the goblins that are well serving the village, and in the same manner that Ainz remembers all of the servants in Nazareth at the so it all is rather interesting and creates a rather interesting parallel. There was also one minor detail that was shown in this episode, which is not all that important, but it's minutely important nonetheless, and that was just Ainz is still gathering more information and gold and resources as Lord Momon. For what reason does he still keep up that charade? I do not exactly know, but there are a few possibilities. One of those would be that he would eventually reveal himself as reveal Momon to be Ainz, to eventually spread his name even further and gain even more influence. And there's quite a lot of different possibilities as well, so yeah. Well, few other possibilities. But yeah, it's all quite equal. It's a pretty good episode. Just generally a pretty good episode, but it's just I've had a really strange feeling about this whole season so far, and that is that not all that much happened yet. Sure, it has been a lot of setup, a lot of things have been, a lot of have happened, but nothing much of substance has actually happened. Sure, is meaning that they have had a lot of time to build up things, but it doesn't really mean that a lot of things have happened. A lot of things of importance. Very strange, but that probably means that they are just building up to once the season really starts to get rolling, to have episodes that are of vast importance and have a lot of impact over the events that transpire. So it's going to be interesting to see when exactly things will kick into a higher gear. But for now, it's just an adequate episode, just generally speaking. Now that being said, I have so many thoughts about the show so far, and I'm generally loving the show quite a bit. But for now, we are just going to end the episode, and I thank you all very much for watching. I hope to see you in the future. Have a great day, and stay awesome. Ganmu out. Thank you all very much for watching.